How's it going, YouTube? I'm doing outstanding, and today we are going to talk about the Hanford Nuclear Facility, one of easily the most important nuclear facilities in the world. For you see, without the Hanford Nuclear Facility, we wouldn't have situations like Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, or most of the nuclear technology that we have today at all. There's a lot of ups and downs. You see, all of the plutonium that was used in the bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki was manufactured in the Hanford Nuclear Facility. And do you know where that is? It's in Washington, right on the Columbia River. I'll show you a picture here. Oh, no, come on. Come on. I hate this camera, I swear. It's right over here. 580 square miles. And it flows right down into the Columbia River, which leads out to the ocean. Portland, Vancouver, and radionuclides have been detected at the beaches. It is an incredibly dangerous facility that is aging quite rapidly at this point. Built in the early 1950s, or earlier than that. It was in the 1940s, because obviously the bomb was dropped in the 1940s. Anyway, the main point being, it's incredibly dangerous. This is where the first real nuclear reactors were built. Not, the small atomic piles, but a reactor. The Hanford Nuclear Facility contained most of its waste inside of these steel tanks that were incredibly well made at the time in the 1940s and 50s. I mean, this place is huge, and it's connected right there to the river, because it has to be. River water was really the only way to get that much water into a nuclear facility to make sure things stayed cool, which, whatever. That's not going to irradiate anything. If done properly, it should just flow in, cool things flow out. No big deal. But these tanks, they were like a special type of seal that was like several layers thick that shouldn't be able to leak for 50 years. Plot twist though, that was more than 50 years ago, and it's been leaking a lot into the Columbia River. Like I said, radionuclides have been detected all the way out at the beach, 300 some odd miles away. I mean, that's right. 580 square miles is gigantic. For just a single facility, that's not even like, separate companies and all that. That's not including the Richland City. That's just the facility itself. And because of that, they had to use this tunnel system with trains that would transport the materials and sometimes act as storage for the material, because keeping it underground is a little bit safer. However, these tunnels have collapsed multiple times because no one's there to take care of them. No one's there to make sure that these are maintaining structure. And it's dangerous. Now, they are trying to do things about it. They're taking their contaminated waste to a place called PermaFix, which sounds like a fake company right out of Marvel. It really does. And it does not get better when you really start looking at it. Because PermaFix is located right there. I forgot this damn camera. There we go. PermaFix Northwest. And it's just a short walk away from North Richland Kinder Care. A preschool. A fucking preschool. And that'd be fine if they were dealing with the nuclear waste in a safe manner and getting it processed and turned into the uranium pellets that they do, which is like little glass beads stored in concrete that they can put in a barrel and put the barrel underground several states away where nobody ever is going to see it. But they don't. They do that process, but they don't do it well, because there have been multiple fires at the PermaFix building. And because of the nature of the chemicals and materials that they're working with, they cannot have a normal fire suppression system, Because if you had one of those sprinkler systems that sprays down water and gets everything nice and wet, there's problems. For you see, water helps reactions and hinders it. It's weird. Um, there are multiple types of reactors. There's the high power channel type reactor that uses graphite bricks with, oh, was it tungsten? I want to. No, that's not right. Carbide. I don't know. Some sort of fucking tubes that hinder the process, right? Uh, and then there's the water type reactors uh, that use the water to cool it as well as to help the process along. But when there's no water, boom, it can't continue. It'll stop, but it'll cool. Uh, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. Mostly, you don't really want to be working with uranium anymore. Anyway, you want to do a thorium reactor. Um, and without the reactor at the Hanford nuclear site, they could have never built Chernobyl. It's actually supposed to be a pretty one-to-one ripoff of it. The only thing that made sure it wasn't was the fact that they wanted to build it bigger, they wanted to build it better, and they wanted to build it cheaper. And then they had, and even then, Chernobyl would have run probably mostly fine if it had been maintained by anybody with any level of intelligence that cared about the safety of the people rather than, keeping the reactor running. Not the point, though. Back to Hanford. With PermaFix, they can't have those fire suppression systems because it would spread that material into the groundwater in the air, and if even just a smidgen of what goes through there gets into the groundwater or the air, it could kill a lot of people. I mean, it is several times more than a lethal dose of radiation coming off of this material. Like, you have to be very thoroughly protected, and yet it's what, probably less than a mile away from this school, and I had a fire there because one of the workers took the uranium pellets out of the furnace, whatever you want to call it, and set it down on a wooden pallet and walked away to do who knows what, maybe go to break, bathroom, what have you, doesn't matter. It caught fire. And that's frightening. Luckily nothing we know of happened. But still, to think that something could have happened or could still happen, because this is not something that stopped happening 50 years ago. The fire was only in like 2013. It's ridiculous that a situation like this can even happen. I highly suggest reading The Making of the Atomic Bomb by Richard Rhodes or The Apocalypse Factory by Steve Olson. Both are incredibly detailed books that go through the nuclear process and how we got to the atomic bombs, as well as, the Hanford nuclear facility, and just how much it changed the world around it. I mean, the Hanford used to just be a very, very small farm town in the middle of a desert. I mean, we're talking nowhere. Until the government decided to just walk in one day and buy the property from the people for really next to nothing. There are reports of people receiving $1,500 for 40 plus acres. And now, sure, in the 1950s, $1,500 could go further than it could today, but that was still an absolute ripoff at the time. I mean, we're some of them were saying that, like, the well that they had put in cost $1,900. So to get $1,500 for their property is terrible. And then their bodies of their relatives were exhumed and moved elsewhere. Nobody was allowed to stay in Hanford. I mean, it's just, I really highly, highly recommend looking further into it, especially if you live in the area, because the Hanford nuclear facility will continue poisoning the Columbia until something is done about it. I'd stay out of the Columbia if I were you, and I'd make sure you do anything you can to prevent this from becoming the next big nuclear disaster. It's not going to be a fast one like Chernobyl. It's going to be a slow, over time destruction of that river that flows through there and the land that surrounds it. As it stands, people who fish in that river already have been showing higher rates of cancer, especially close to the Hanford nuclear site. That's all I have.